So if you read this sentence here, to be or not to be, that is the question, right? Good old the Shakespeare, correct? And it might be a question you're asking right now based upon how well you're doing in this course. So with all that said, I say jokingly, of course, right? So with all that said, this is a string. This is a string, right? It's all out there. It's a big sentence in this case. And as I mentioned before in my previous video, a string is a collection of characters. That term collection and the word character really means something to us programmers. As a programmer, we can actually access each character individually using what is called an index. Okay? A Dewey Decimal System is an index, right? So what does that mean? When you remember the whole library piece, I don't know if you do or not, but if you walk into the library and get in the Dewey Decimal System, it points to a location of where the book is actually located, right? In this case, that's what an index actually is to programmers. An index is a counter, okay? It's an address, it's a number, it's an integer, a counter that is incremented to point to a relative location in a string, okay? And the counter always begins at 0. So for every string, we have this thing called an index, which is a counter that is incremented by 1 for each character within the string, and it always starts at 0. Why is that important? Because we're going to use that. We can use that index to point to something. And by pointing to it, we can do a couple things. We can format it, we can change it, we can move it around, we can pull it out of the string to actually do something with it, and so on and so on. So we use what's called an index to actually do this. So before we get into the functions and methods of that VB has for us for strings, you're going to recognize that when we get into this thing, it will start referencing this thing called an index. And the index is the actual address of each individual character within a string. So if I sit back and I look at my to be or not to be, what I mean by that is the letter T is index 0. The letter O is index 1. The space between it, index 3, 4, 5, you kind of keep going. 6 is the space again, 7, 8. 9 would be a space, this would be 10, 11, 12, and it continues all the way out. For now and forevermore, every string has a corresponding index to it that we as programmers will allow us to get into this string to manipulate it. Once again, the whole concept of string manipulation. All right, so it's very important in this short video you just understand this new concept called an index. All right. And I'll have this posted out there for you to be able to read. But all it is an address, a counter that points to a relative location in a string. All right, keep that in mind as we continue on with the next videos talking about some of the, once again, methods that are out there for us to actually use and how we'll use this particular index to actually manipulate the strings.